Good evening, School District 5. My name is Akil Ross. I'm the Superintendent of School District 5 of Lexington and Richland counties. And thank you so much for joining us this evening as we discuss a potential bond referendum for our community. I must start out by saying that we cannot use any district resources to advocate the passage of a bond referendum. So this is simply an opportunity to share with you, our community, our thoughts, things that we have been discussing in terms of moving forward in terms of the future of our community and our schools. Because of that, we're giving you an opportunity for some feedback. So during this presentation, there'll be times where we're going to pause and we're going to have an opportunity for you to weigh in through our virtual poll. So this will be a polling feature. This will be recorded and posted at a later date for the community's review for you to go back over it. There's going to be a lot of information that we share, and in that sharing of information, we want to give you time to reflect, to process what we're discussing, and that you can provide feedback tonight or at a later date. So we thank you for this. This is an opportunity to help me and the administration inform the school board on the best direction for our school. And that's what it's all about. It's about a system. We believe in the systems view as an organization that's designed answering three critical questions in terms of educating our children. Why do we do this work? How do we accomplish it? And what is our overall outcome? When I teach at USC, the Intro to Education class, this is what I talk to our students about. How do we have an aligned vision, mission, and outcomes? We answered that question of vision when we talked about the ability of loving and growing our students, and that was the united vision of our community. We highlighted a mission that talked about the academic and the social and emotional growth and development of our students. But it's very important to understand that we have two very impactful elements to this mission, two things that are challenging us. The first one is mental health. As we look at the condition and the situation that what our students are facing, we just in our last month analysis of all of the cases that have come before our social workers above the schools, we've had 8,103 cases above the school. That's not addressing the situations that we have in the classrooms that our teachers and our faculties face every single day. It just shows that we are grappled with the mental health issues. 288 suicide evaluations that we've done thus far. Again, things that we are grappling with within our community and our schools. And our mission statement is a reflection of how we're trying to overcome that. The visual representation of that is the umbrella. This is our whole child continuum. It's important to know as a system what our whole reason for being is. And so to reach those academic outcomes that we seek, we need to address this entire whole child continuum, looking at academic readiness, behavioral issues, mental health, meeting social needs, physical health, and physical safety. All of this is necessary in order to educate a child. But I want to talk about and use the balance of tonight to discuss this part of our mission statement: a safe, secure, and equitable learning environment for all. When we talk about equity, we're talking about that pledge that we make every single day for 180 days that ends with liberty and justice for all. Equity is justice. And so in coming up with a plan, the board asked that we devise some guiding principles that would help us determine how we're going to move forward in a systematic way. Those principles consisted of community analysis, facility needs assessment, enrollment projections, and our instructional plan review that would come together to form the plan. And so tonight, members of our community, I present our plan, building a strong educational foundation for School District 5 of Lexington and Richland counties. And this plan encompasses the foundational work that we believe will ensure that we have academic success and meeting the vision that we set for years to come. But that brings us to our first poll question. And our first poll question gives you an opportunity to let us know who's watching tonight. And so we'll move forward with that. And that is, in which attendance zone of School District 5 community do you live? So which attendance zone of the School District 5 community do you live? We'll give you about 30 seconds to let us know where you're calling from. All right. Thank you so much. We certainly appreciate that input. I want to go over the second challenge that we're facing in our community, trying to address the vision and the mission that we set forth, trying to get the outcomes in which we so dearly seek, and that is poverty's impact on proficiency. Poverty's impact on proficiency. We are cited as one of the wealthier districts in the state of South Carolina with a 43% poverty index, when the average in the state of South Carolina is 60%. But if you look at the distribution of that, we serve a very different, not equally distributed poverty across our district. And I see us as, even though we talked about the attendance zone, I see us as 3 communities with 1 family. 3 communities but 1 family. And if you have more than 1 child or raised with multiple siblings, you can know that you can be in the same house, raised by the same people, and be totally different. And that's kind of how I see what we're looking at in terms of moving forth with different needs in different communities. I akin it to taking my family shopping for shoes. We don't leave with the same shoe or the same size, but we all leave with what fits us. And as we look at the needs within our community, we're not saying that children in poverty can't learn and achieve. We're saying that the needs in areas of high poverty are different and have to be addressed. And so if we drill down, we believe in community schools, placing at least an elementary school in every community. We'll see the differences in terms of poverty's impact on proficiency by our attendance zones of elementary schools. And we have to serve all of our community. And so you can look right away and see the difference between Lake Murray Elementary with 18% poverty index to Seven Oaks with 84%. But we serve them all, and how we serve them and how we allocate our resources is going to be very important. But we look at those resources. It is important for us to see that in our areas of high poverty, we concentrate facilities that are in poor or fair rated conditions. And this layered on top of the other mental health, poverty's impact on proficiency, poor rated and fair rated facilities, you can start to see the difficulty we're going to have in trying to establish that strong foundation for educational excellence. Each layer of complexity added on top causes an impact on our overall outcomes. And so as we look at the 2019 district-wide facilities needs assessment by NRECON, we find out of the 24 facilities that were rated, we have 10 that rated either poor or fair. There's only 1 in Chapin, and that's Chapin High School. And even though it had its renovations, we see parity issues in terms of its arts program. You look at Dutch Fork High School, which is one of our newer high schools before the 2008 bond referendum, but it's in need of upgrades and renovations. The district office, and I know there's not a lot of talk about district office, but A quarter of the building has been surrendered to mold. We tried to fight it off in November. It's come back very aggressive. And so that department has been shifted to another school because of the life safety issues. We look at Dutch Fork Elementary School, a school built in 1953, hasn't gone over any major rehab since then. This is the only school when I speak to that says, we believe we should be rated poor. But this school is in desperate need of serious upgrades to address their needs. We see the issues in Harbison West and Nursery Road, schools without walls for instance, Nursery Road, which would open in 1979, and that concept of multiple classes operating in a large open space is proving and they're doing an amazing job at these schools, but it's difficult to provide the same type of education that we're providing in our newer elementary schools and our renovated elementary schools. COVID did not help. It is very hard to mitigate in these open concepts. We see needs for renovations at Crossroads Intermediate and Irmo Middle School, Seven Oaks Elementary School, which is in dire need of security upgrades. And I would argue probably in the most need in the fleet of buildings would be the Irmo High School East Wing and that campus. And so we're thankful for our Board of Trustees for addressing the life safety issues at the district office, for committing $50 million to the Irmo High and the Crossroads renovations to try to address it, but we still have a long way to go. And as we layer each one of these complexities, mental health, poverty's impact on proficiency, and the facility needs, it has an impact on the instructional outcomes. If you look at the 2022 U.S. News and World Report, you see that it has Chapin rated 14th in the state, Spring Hill High is 6, Dutch Fork High School at 11, but Irmo High School at 111 out of 243 schools in the state of South Carolina. Different communities, same family, and all families need the fit in order for them to reach their potential. This is not, and I repeat, not against the teachers and the staff and the students. It's really about removing these layers of complexity so that they all may rise, meeting them with their needs, not only in just mental health, not only in just academic resources, but also in the physical plan, so that they can, in the instructional plan, so that they can do well. And we're excited about these investments because we show that investing in areas of high poverty can drive poverty down. What we see in this 11-year difference in our community, that as you move away from areas of high poverty, or that our population shifts away from that, and there's not that investment back in the eastern end of our district, poverty increases out. I don't want to perpetually serve children in poverty. I want to use the educational resources that we have to transform them out of it. That's why I want to invite you, if you're able to come out to Irmo High School on May 18th at 5 o'clock, where we will unveil a new vision for Irmo. There are certain students who they don't want to go to college, or they don't want to go to a 2-year, don't know why they're going to college or a 2-year. And so we're going to give them a unique opportunity to get access to the economy now, to show children how to get out of poverty with education right now through entrepreneurship and small business ownership. And so they will open up businesses in that new renovated building. We will have a small business incubator there. Students will not only start their businesses, but work for their classmates. We'll have a bank in the school, insurance, and the students will learn how to get access to the economy right now, using education as what it's promised to be, a way to lift people as a great equalizer out of poverty. But we have to set up the instructional frame for that. And currently, this is the method in which we're delivering. We take in areas of of those 10 communities, as diverse as they are, we send 10 elementary schools to one school for 1 year and ask that school to bring them out into 2 different communities. And I'll tell you this, these teachers at Crossroads Intermediate School are doing amazing work. I met with them over the last 2 days talking about this transition. They are the best at transition in the state of South Carolina, but these challenges are hard for any faculty, and they have shouldered this for our district, and we're so very proud of them. We are honored to even have from the faculty Ms. Westfall, Lisa Westfall, 6th grade teacher at Crossroads, who is our district teacher of the year, sharing that Crossroads story of transition, how they can take that 6th graders, not elementary, not middle, but needs their transition. And so we'll be transitioning that concept, that 6th grade transition concept, to 2 academies, one at Irmo Middle and one at Dutford Middle, to create this flow. And so these 6th grade academies at the middle schools, housing that Crossroads transitionary model, will allow our communities to map backwards from high school all the way to elementary school, creating those flows in Irmo and Dutch Fork that we have had in Chapin for so long. And this is important. When these investments are put into all of our districts, into the Irmo and Dutch Fork, it will drive people to come to these new opportunities, to come to these new investments. If we look at our district, this is in 2013, the 135th day report. In 2013, about 9 years ago, 25% of our attendance of this in-person enrollment was in Chapin schools. 38% was in Dutch Fork, and 36% was in Irmo. That was in 2013. If you look at today, 38% is in Chapin, 30% in Dutch Fork, and 31% in Irmo. And so we believe that by putting these investments throughout the district, that we would give families the opportunity to see the benefits of moving and bringing their families to all parts of our community. But right now, we're challenged with the reality that while 38% of our student population is in Chapin, there's 6 zone schools there. There's 7 in Dutch Fork, and there are 8 in Irmo. And so how do we move forward with these kind of disparities there? And so if you drill down again at the elementary school level, where our elementary schools are placed in our communities, you can see the occupancy rate. You can see the darker the area, the higher the amount of capacity you have. The lighter the area, the lower the capacity. So you see areas where in Chapin Elementary or Lake Murray Elementary, we're reaching high levels or critical levels of building capacity. If you look at the middle, intermediate, and high school, you can see how Chapin High School is at 90% full. You can see Chapin Intermediate School at 85% capacity. And so the question becomes, at what point do we get worried about the occupancy level? At what point do we have to make a change? How full is too full? You know, talking with teachers, and we go and we say, well, if you look at 85%, classrooms are one thing, but you have other areas. You have hallways, you have the cafeteria, you have gyms, you have playgrounds. You have these locker room spaces. You have all of these areas in which capacity matters. walking into a cafeteria and 85% of the seats are taken. Finding your 15% can be a little challenging. Walking in a hallway where 85% of the hallway is full. Finding your area of 15% could be a little challenging. And so when we look at these capacities, we have a reality that we need to address because these are today's numbers. These are not the numbers for tomorrow. And as we look at what tomorrow brings, we rely on the Malone and McBroom study from July 2020. And in that study gives us an idea of where is growth projected to be for the next 10 years. And there lies the issue that we need to address. We need to address the growth projections in Chapin. Again, we saw how in 9 years, we went from 25% of the population in Chapin to 38%. Well, that trend is going to continue. And we need to get ahead of that change in order to meet those needs. Case in point, looking at what happens in Chapin High School with a core capacity of 1,700 students. They're currently in their 135th day count at 1,530. Growing 50 students a year is a very conservative growth. It's 3 years before they're at their over capacity. And so something must be done before we get to that part. How we address that? Well, I think before we start talking about a referendum, we must first do a little school finance 101. It's important to understand how we address our buildings in our district. We have three major pots of revenue: federal, which is 6%, state, which is 47%, and local, which is 46% of the entire pot. If we look at the local, that's where when people say, well, that's a wealthy district, they're talking about the local share. Where our local money comes from a millage. A millage is a tax on real estate and other property. There's two types that we assess in the local. That's an operating millage and a debt service millage. Say operations is for staff, debt service is for stuff. So you have staff and stuff. And so if we look at where this is coming from, on the operation side, there is a 100% rebate on 4% properties. 4% assessed properties are our houses where we raise our families. Majority of the 6% of our businesses or investment properties. And so when it comes to paying for teachers and staff and our utilities, the lion's share of that is on the businesses. The houses and subdivisions in our community pay virtually nothing to the operations of school. But on the debt service side, there is a partial rebate. So houses do contribute. Now people will say, well, Dr. Ross, all of this talk about money, why don't you use this money to pay for salaries, to improve, give teachers a raise? Well, by law, you cannot use the debt service millage, the millage for stuff, to pay for staff. So these funds that we're going to be talking about tonight, this is for debt service, this is for construction, it's for technology and equipment and renovations. It cannot be used to pay for staff. And so we're going to use it to address the facilities needs assessment that was outlined by the MBCON report. We have of the 24, 6 rated fair, 4 that were rated poor. And to do that, we're looking at providing the board with 4 options. Option 1, and we'll discuss each option tonight, is that we take no action on the remaining fair, poor and fair rated facilities. However, to address the capacity issues, in the future capacity issues, we would have to rezone 13 elementary schools to address the growth in the Chapin schools. And I will show that this evening. Option 2, we look at the MBCOM report, and we would ask the community for $340 million. This would increase the debt service taxes, but we can address all of our schools in School District 5 of Lexington and Richland counties. We can live at our means or borrow at our millage. By living at our means, borrowing at our millage, we assess access to $150 million. That's a zero increase to the debt service tax. Again, that's no tax increase. It's borrowing within our means, and we maintain our tax rate. But we address at that point just the poor and fair rated facilities. Or we can actually borrow below our means. We can drop debt service about 1 mil and still address the poor and fair rated facilities with $150 million. So let's talk about options 3 and 4, and then we'll go to option 1. So to talk about options 3 and 4, I have this chart here that shows the project, the estimated cost. And if I go back here, you can see 3 asterisk stars. These are estimates with inflationary impact. You may have seen a presentation out there with 2 stars. That was before we factored for inflation. So these are our latest figures with our latest estimates factoring in inflationary impact. And so the first project would be that we have on the list is to add a professional development wing to the district office to help us with the challenges of meeting today's needs, to train our teachers and staff, to meet with our community. This would be a $4.7 million project. We would again take the Crossroads model and transition them to 6th grade academies at both Dutch Fork Middle and Irmo Middle. These are 6th grade academies. As I met with the faculty and staff today and yesterday, and said we're not closing Crossroads, we're transitioning it to the Dutch Fork and Irmo Middle School academies. These are 6th grade transitionary academies that would be on site at Dutch Fork and Irmo Middle. Crossroads would then change into an elementary school through a renovation and an early childhood education center. 80% of the brain is developed in the first 3 years, and having access, especially in our areas of high concentrated poverty, to have an early childhood education center gives us a shot, gives these families and these students a shot to be able to meet their end goal, which is graduating college and career ready. Once the academies are up and running and the faculty of Crossroads is settled in their new places, either at Dutch Fork or Irmo, we would move Nursery Road Elementary School into the renovated Crossroads site. At that point, it would be Nursery Road at Campus I. Nursery Road at Campus I. And Nursery Road at its current site would be fully renovated. And that remodel would be about $21 million. Once Nursery Road is fully remodeled, Nursery Road will leave Campus I, go back into Nursery Road Elementary School. At that time, Harbison West. At that time, Harbison West, the other poor-rated elementary school, would move into the Crossroads site. And that's where Harbison West would stay. It would be Harbison West still in the same attendance zone. It does not move attendance zones. It will be in the same attendance zone as Harbison West, maybe Harbison Way West, but it will be in the same attendance zone as Harbison West Elementary School. The current Harbison West site, which we struggled to secure, will be sold back to the community. We're estimating $3 million back into the project. At this point, we still need to address the growth in Chapin. Spring Hill High School now houses the Academy for Success. Piney Woods houses the 5 program, and Irmo High School houses adult education. Those 3 programs need to leave those schools. I'm proposing to put them at the current Dutch Fork Elementary School site. We will totally renovate the Dutch Fork Elementary School site. If you're familiar with that area, Broad River Road is right in front of it. It is going to be expanded into 5 lanes from I-26 to the Chick-fil-A right here by the district office, making it increasingly impacted as an elementary school site, but perfect for adult education for older children. And so with that, Dutch Fork Elementary, which is the 1953 building, will get a brand new Dutch Fork Elementary School in the current Dutch Fork Elementary School site. And so in their attendance zone, not the site, I'm sorry, in the brand new Dutch Fork Elementary in the current Dutch Fork Elementary School attendance zone. The Dutch Fork Elementary School site would be then converted to the Rosenwald Rich Lex building. If you're familiar with the history of this area, the Rich Lex building was the name of that building prior to integration. So it will return to that and be the house of our alternative education programs. Seven Oaks Elementary School will get security upgrades. Chapin High is fine arts building. Dutch Fork and Irmo High School would get stadium renovations. It would be parity to what is going out at Chapin now. So specifically the press boxes of W.C. Hawkins and the Dutch Fork Stadium would be upgraded. Dutch Fork High School will receive much needed renovations for restrooms, for lighting. And then we're tasked with security upgrades. We're seeing an increase in weapons coming into schools, and we have some ideas. We'd rather not share all of our security secrets, but we want to be able to upfit our buildings, our existing buildings, to address the increased security needs that we're facing in our community. So all of that is the budget for $150 million. And so that was a lot. So we have 2 poll questions that we would like to share with you. We're going to do them one at a time, though. 2 poll questions, one at a time. So the first one, which of the new construction projects is most important to you? Which of the following new construction projects is most important to you? Okay. Now we're going to move to the second question. Which of the following building modifications or renovations is most important to you? Which of the following building modifications or renovations is most important to you? Okay. We're going to ask that you can submit questions as well. We're going to have at the end of this presentation an opportunity for you to ask questions. So if you want to start loading those questions in, we will have our moderator, Laurel McElveen, who will help us in assisting and answering those questions. So let's go to how we will actually finance these projects. This is kind of the finance structure of it. And going back to our School Finance 101, we're reminded of a bond referendum as a debt that we assume when we issue general obligation bonds. They sell them on Wall Street. In fact, this happens more than you would realize. We did a bond referendum on April the 11th for the Irmo High School project. And it typically gives us, and what this gives us is what I akin to a credit card that gives us the ability to spend money in order to improve our facilities. The notion is that you can only spend up to 8% of the total assessed value of all the assets in your attendance zone. And so because of that, we are cognizant that when we go over that, we go over that 8%, that we would have to then go to the voters for approval. So if we wanted 8.1% of total assessed value, it would need to go to the voters. And so here are the 4 options, and which we are presenting to the board. We're going to be asking you what your opinion of what option the board should consider. But if you look at our total assessed value of all of the assets within our attendance zone of School District 5 of Lexington and Richland counties, you see it's $586,383 and $383,014. With option number 1, we stay at our 8% limit, which gives us no one time can we have over $46.9 million in debt out. However, the majority of this, the lion's share of this, is going to be used for the Irmo project. Option 2, we would go to 58% of the assessed value, and that would increase taxes, but that would give the district $340 million in order to address the facilities. We have options 3 and 4. We would be at 26% of the assessed value, and this would be 0 increase in taxes, no change in tax at all. Or with option 4, we may actually realize a small decrease in taxes. And so how do we accomplish this? We asked our financial advisor, PFM, to give us kind of some visuals of that. The gray represents our existing debt. The dotted line represents what we would call our millage cap. And all of this space, the millions in there for each year, represents the funds that we can assess by staying under our millage cap, meaning not raising the millage. So the moment you go over that dotted line, that's when you were requiring taxes to increase. But we're asking to borrow within that millage cap, or even lower it and borrow within that space, and it would not cause a increased tax burden on those 4% or 6% assessed properties. So in option 2, with the $340 million on top of our gray existing debt, there would not be a dotted line. There would be no line, and we would, as you can see those values in black, we would increase the millage from the current 69.5 mills to, in some cases, as high as 103.68 mills to service the debt that we have out. So that represents that debt. Gray represents our existing debt. Yellow represents the Irmo project that we have committed to, and we thank our board for that. Red is we will always be in debt. This is our annual maintenance. This is how we keep our buildings going. That's at $15 million. So that will always be a part of the equation. But blue represents the bond referendum debt. And so you can see how this staggers out and how we service it over time. So let's look at option 3. In option 3, the cap is put back on. We don't go over that to increase taxes, and you can see how the 150 million is gained through the space that we have here. In option 4, it's not that different from option 3, but you don't start to realize space until 2033 or 2034, wherein you start getting more capacity a little 2 years earlier in option 3. But again, there's a $0 tax increase with option 3, a small decrease. We haven't quantified that with option 4. And so as a recap, I think it's important. We are currently with this model. We would like to move to this model, taking the Crossroads concept, moving that into 6th grade academies at both Irmo and Dutch Fork. But that doesn't address the growth in Chapin. So if the referendum passes, we would move to phase 3. And phase 3 is where we have to address the growth in Chapin. In phase 3, Ballantyne Elementary School moves out of the Dutch Fork cluster into the Chapin cluster. If we look at today, if this was to happen today, there's 25 students at Ballantyne who are zoned for Chapin High. They will continue to be zoned for Chapin High. The 25 students currently in Ballantyne zoned for Chapin High School, they will continue to be zoned for Chapin High School. The Delta, the 518 students who are zoned for Dutch Fork High School, who attend Ballantyne, those 518 will be redistributed over either River Springs, H.E. Corley, Dutch Fork Elementary, and Oak Point to balance those schools out. The students at River Springs, H.E. Corley, Dutch Fork Elementary, Oak Point, who currently go there, will not be rezoned. I repeat, the students in this plan who currently attend River Springs, H.E. Corley, Dutch Fork Elementary, Oak Point, they will not be rezoned. They will continue at their schools. Some of them will just have new classmates from the Ballantyne. Ballantyne now, by being moved into Chapin, between Piney Woods Elementary, Chapin Elementary, Lake Murray Elementary, and now Ballantyne Elementary, I would have 3,334 seats available for elementary. That means I can bring 5th grade into the elementary schools in Chapin. So Chapin could be pre-K to 5 at this point, pre-K to 5th grade for all Chapin elementary schools. That means that the growth that we're seeing from Chapin Intermediate that would eventually go to Chapin Middle, we can address that now. Chapin Intermediate would move to Chapin Middle School and would be fed by Piney Woods and Chapin Elementary. The current Chapin Middle School would turn into Spring Hill Middle School and be fed by Lake Murray Elementary and Ballantyne Elementary. And both of those middle schools would feed into Chapin High School. And this is where I'm proposing to stay, where Spring Hill High School continues to remain an all-school magnet. Spring Hill High School continues to remain an all-school magnet. And by doing that, that new Spring Hill Middle School, which is current Chapin Middle School, will allow us to fuel students into the Spring Hill High School. And that would, in theory, bring down the population at Chapin High School, relieve some of that going over that 80% or 85% threshold at Chapin High School. Now, if we can maintain at this phase, we will maintain at phase 3. However, if we cannot, and Chapin High School outgrows itself, then we would have to move to, I would propose that we move to phase 4. In phase 4, Spring Hill Middle School zones directly into Spring Hill High School. And because the Spring Hill High School is an all-school magnet, it would change how that magnet operates. I would like to stay at phase 3, where Spring Hill operates exactly how it operates now. But if that growth happens, then Spring Hill Middle School would then go to phase 4, zoning into Spring Hill High School. This allows us to balance the growth, to bring all schools down from its high capacity, and to address the growth that we're going to see from years to come. When you look at the McBroom report, Malone and McBroom report, I see with confidence that their projections were almost spot on this year. So what we see coming for years to come, we need to be prudent. We need to get ahead of this and address that. So phase 3 and phase 4. So that leads me to our next poll question. If the referendum passes, which phase do you prefer? Phase 3 or phase 4? If the referendum passes, which phase do you prefer? Phase 3 or phase 4? Let's take about 30 seconds to answer that question. I think it's important to talk about what happens if there is no referendum or a referendum fails. And if it fails, then we have option 1. We still have to address the growth in Chapin, but we have to do it with the existing structure in which we have, because the bonding capacity that we have is already used at Irmo High School. And so we have to deal with all of these changes with the current funds that we have, and that's going to be very limited. So with that, I would have to, in a sense, fill back to the empty schools all the way in Irmo. With phase 3 and 4, we don't rezone any of the Irmo or Dutch Fork schools. And option 1, we have to essentially rezone from Piney Woods to Seven Oaks. In this model, because I need the space at Spring Hill High School, I would still have to bring those alternative programs to Dutch Fork Elementary. But I would have to redistribute Dutch Fork students over the existing schools in Dutch Fork and in Irmo. As a result, I need to bring Harbison West Elementary School into the Dutch Fork cluster and start filling from Seven Oaks and refilling buildings from Seven Oaks, Piney Woods to the center. That would essentially close Dutch Fork Elementary School. The Crossroads building would stay open, and we would have to operate as such in Irmo, with 4 elementary schools in Irmo, 4 elementary schools in Dutch Fork, and those going into Crossroads. The capacities of these schools would operate much higher in this case, but they would all be at a point where no one school would be operating over 100% capacity or in the 90% capacities. So this, if it does not pass, provides us a more sustainable way to address our facilities as is. So these are the options, and I know you're going to want time, so we're recording this for you to review, to look at, make suggestions, give feedback. We will take this to the board facilities committee tomorrow for their review, which is Wednesday. And then on the 9th of May, we'll have the same presentation at the school board's meeting. So you have plenty of opportunity to give feedback and discussion, to review the plan, and to see the numbers that go behind this philosophy. So that leads us to our recommendations again. Option 1, we take no action in terms of moving forward with the referendum. Look at rezoning at minimum of 13 elementary schools, as well as 2 high schools, Chapin and Spring Hill. So that'd be 15 schools. We borrow above our means or millage and get $340 million to increase the debt service taxes. We borrow at our means. We take the $150 million, no increase of taxes, maintain our debt service tax rate, address the poor and fair rated facilities in the plan that was outlined today. We borrow below our means. There'll be a small reduction in debt service tax. It's a longer payoff, and so that could be more interest accrued, but we could still address the poor and fair rated facilities. So our last poll question before we take questions, is we have 2. And the first one is, which of the options before the Board of Trustees do you prefer? So option 1 is take no action. Option 2, borrow above our millage. Option 3, borrow at our millage. Or option 4, borrow below our millage. And if you can take about 30 seconds to identify which of these options will you prefer. All right, and so the last poll question we have is, how do you prefer to be notified about updates? How do you want to be notified about the plan? As you give feedback, as we hear feedback tonight, how would you like to be notified about the plan and the updates? All right, so at this time, we thank you so much for viewing with us and participating in our polls and giving us this great feedback. We're very appreciative of your involvement this evening. But we wanted to open up for questions, and so we're going to ask our moderator, Ms. Laurel McElveen, if you have any questions for the good of the group.
I do, Dr. Ross. I'm going to start out. We got a number of questions from some people that are a little bit concerned about the sale of Harbison West Elementary School. When it comes to selling that property, will the district have a say in who buys it?
When we come to selling it, yes. And so that sale has to be approved. So this is something that we have to actually have approved by the not only our school board, but our state, the Department of Education as well. So there are policies governing who can buy, who we can sell it to, and if that's approved. So That process would be well presented and publicized, so that there'll be an opportunity to know exactly who would be buying that, how much that would be for, um, I mean, how much we would sell it for, and those matters. But must be approved by the Board of Trustees and the State Department of Education.
And a second part to that question is, are there any of your recommendations or plans that do not include the sale of Harbison West?
So in option one, right, we would not sell Harbison West whatsoever, but it would move from the Irmo attendance zone into the Dutch Fork attendance zone.
Okay. Next question that we have talks about Seven Oaks Elementary, and you had some renovations and some upgrades in there that had a price point to it. But their question is, are there some other renovations and things that maybe need to be done to the school that aren't being addressed in this number?
Well, one of the benefits of this number is that it frees up what we call our annual capital, that red that we see in our budget. And if I scroll to that, these red bars allow us to now address we call maintenance, just ongoing maintenance that we need to address in all of our buildings. So by having the blue bars, we don't need to use the red bars in order to address that or lock up those capital dollars. So while we can't put everything in the referendum, it will allow us to use those $15 million annually to go after much needed renovations and improvements at all of our schools.
Okay, and as we speak of renovations, we've got a question about the Dutch Fork Elementary site. How much renovation can actually go into that site since it was built in the 50s?
We can upgrade. In fact, this summer we're upgrading the ceilings. We're upgrading the lighting. We're doing new HVAC work. And we're doing bathrooms, windows. The windows are going to be taken care of. So it's going to get a nice upgrade there. Its operational capacity helps us with alternative education and adult education more than an elementary school site.
Okay, and during these construction upgrades, is that going to impact student instruction at all when some of this stuff starts to take place?
That's a great question. As a principal who worked at a school with a full renovation while I had 1,200 students on campus, we made the commitment that construction would not impact instruction. But we recognize that these things happen, and that's why if you look at our plans, when the build outs at the academies at Dutch Fork Middle School, Irmo Middle School, will happen as a way to not impact the students that are there. So by having separate standalone, we will have limited. I have to say there will be impacts because you're going to have construction laydown. You're going to have changes in how we do the fire drills around the construction areas. But we are working on places like Harbison West and Nursery Road to have swing schools so that we move them away from the construction areas which we can address. I would like to say this about the Dutch Fork Elementary's current site. There's a historical context of Rich Lex Rosenwald School that will be returning back to the community, and I think there's a lot of value in that as well. And also with Harbison West, option 2 will give us some funds that we could do more in terms of transforming that building. So the question was, is there any other options in which we would not sell Harbison West? So option 1 and 2 would be those options.
Okay. With option number 3, do you feel like the district will be able to complete all of the projects that are needed?
Yes, and we've had our estimators come out to provide that inflationary kick. And so you're seeing a lot of sticker shock on our faces because of the initial prices and what we have. But they were looking at, all right, here's where the price of materials, they factor in supply chain issues and the cost of, like I said, raw materials, fuel. And so by having these high estimates, we're hoping that with projects that go through design, bid, build, or construction management and risk, that we would have competition to drive the prices down. But you want to estimate at these inflationary prices, so you don't have the opposite effect. You don't want to borrow, not borrow enough, and then your prices are too high and now you're over budget. So we feel very confident with this. Now, the economy is the economy, and that's why you always have the asterisks of estimates. And so we see interest rates increasing. You see what inflation is doing. So we're going to hold true to these estimates. But a year from now, there's different changes. So the quicker we can lock in, the better we are in terms of maintaining the integrity of these prices.
Do you still see that that we will still be offering schools of choice if we go down different paths?
Of course, the magnet program and the choice program is central. The 5 program is central. All of our programs, these are great questions, have been included in this plan. And so we did not factor them out in the in-person other than the 5 students. And so these numbers that we use, they have 5 students in the 5 program. But by doing this, we have created an opportunity where we can address the future growth of our district while still providing choice and magnets, which are mainly regulated to the eastern end of the district and Dutch Fork Elementary School.
What is the timeline for phase 3 if the bond passes?
So very good. We would hope to get everything completed by 2027. Everything completed and looking at phase 3 by 2027. That is our goal.
Okay, if phase 3 is the option, we've got somebody who wants to know if there will be any renovations that will be done to Crossroads Intermediate School, since that building is fairly old.
Right, Crossroads Crossroads Intermediate, remember, would end up being the Harbison West site.
This one, I'm sorry if I misspoke. Chapin Intermediate. I'm sorry.
Chapin
I don't know if I
Intermediate. Yes, okay. Chapin Intermediate School. So Chapin Intermediate, we do have that's not within the bond, but will be within our maintenance to address the issues that are there, especially converting it back from Chapin Intermediate to Chapin Middle School.
Okay, this next question, if the bond is approved and a new Dutch Fork Elementary is built, where will it be built?
So great question. I don't want to tell anybody, because if we tell it, then somebody would increase the price of selling it to us. But it would be in, we actually know the site, but it would be in the current attendance zone of Dutch Fork Elementary School now. So it would not change any lines, but for fiduciary responsibilities to the district, we're seen as deeper pockets. So we identify a spot that we're interested in. It drives the price out of range.
Okay. And I think you did address this in your presentation, but somebody was just wondering if you could just talk through some of the challenges that Harbison West Elementary has on their campus. They think it'd be, helpful for the community to hear some of the challenges that are presented to the campus and the way that the school is set up.
Right, and if you look at Harbison West, it's a perfect community school, and it's situated right in walking distance of a lot of different communities. What we're faced with now is our community is facing different changes. We've had some incidences of security scares at Harbison. We're not trying to alarm anyone, but we have some concerns about securing the campus. It's the only building in our district that we can't put a fence all the way around to protect. And so, if we look at that plus what it costs in order to fully renovate the inside, we start getting outside of our potential. And so that leads to the very difficult notion of moving Harbison West from its current site to the Campus I or Crossroads site. But if you've been to Harbison West, the backyard, it shares that yard with the community. No other school can we not put a fence around. And so building that out, uh, right now we're not in a position of doing that, and we would use the Crossroads site as the future Harbison West. In the sharing on that campus, because of the size of that site, would be the early childhood center.
Okay, we've got like a two-part question here. What will the first part of it, what would the timeline be for the Child Development Center to be completed?
So the Childhood Development Center would be completed with the renovations of Nursery Road, which we're looking at, I think that's 26, 27. But we would not open it until we are to the last move, until Harbison West is in and settled. So you will see that one of the final phases is the furniture that goes in, the need for staffing of that facility to receive the adequate certifications that it would need. And so we're putting that as to be a conservative estimate of our last phase of 26, 27.
And this person would like to know, because it helped them propel into education to be a teacher, because at their high school students had the opportunity to work at the Child Development Center, and that helped her become a teacher. So is that an opportunity you see down the line for our students?
We see that as amazing opportunities for our students and for some of our staff. And I think as a great outreach program for our teacher cadets, for those who are interested in early childhood education, and to take care of our students, especially in those, and this is designed to really give access to early childhood education and care to those families that are struggling to find access to it.
Okay, and we've got somebody that's wondering about adding a 4K program or 4K to Piney Woods and 5th grade to Piney Woods. A little bit, is it possible to add a 6th grade to Chapin Middle? I know you've talked about all of this, so if you could just kind of recap from some people that may still have questions lingering.
Yeah, so the primary goal is to address the what we call aid to classrooms, those grades that we're required to serve, and that's that K through 5. And so by having K through 5 at all of the elementary schools in the district, then all of our middle schools would be 6th, 7th, and 8th. So Chapin Middle School, which was formerly Chapin Intermediate, will be 6th, 7th, and 8th. Spring Hill Middle School, which is formerly Chapin Middle School, would be 6th, 7th, and 8th. So with Irmo Middle and Dutch Fork Middle. That allows us parity. It allows us to allocate resources as we plan, as we work together across our community. It will allow us to pick up efficiencies there as well. The decision to bring in 3 or 4K, we haven't discussed that at this time. We have to at first create our mandated requirements, and then once we do that, we would have capacity at these schools to look at other options and programs.
This question, do your attendance percentage for the current time frame include Spring Hill in the Chapin attendance area, even though it's the magnet program that pulls students that do not live in the Chapin area?
Awesome question. So right now, the numbers do not have the Spring Hill students in that. If those students were going back, these capacities would be much higher. So we're committed in phase 3 to keep Spring Hill just as it is, drawing just as it currently does. The only difference is that as we use the area that the Academy for Success is in, we would use those for additional choiced or magnet students from Chapin High School. The goal is to drive down the Chapin High School number by increasing the amount of Chapin High School students that can go to Spring Hill's whole school magnet. I hope that answers the question.
Okay. If Spring Hill High School were to become a zone school, would we then provide different programming that it does not currently have, like sports and the arts and those other kinds of activities?
So it would be a fully zoned, comprehensive school with a full battery of everything: drama, arts, athletics, band, orchestra. So it would have those programs. Building those out without the funds is going to be a huge challenge. But if the funds are provided, then we would gradually build those out over time through our capital improvements. And so have very early conversations, with Dr. Lofton and his team about even under phase 3, starting to work on building the athletic facilities there. If you're aware or not, it has a site for future athletic facilities. So we would under option 3 or 4, we would slowly work at building those facilities out in the event option 4 came. Phase 4 came. But if not, it would still give that school some flexibility to do athletics if it chose to do so.
Okay, and if some of these changes take place and if Ballantyne is rezoned to that Chapin area, what is the time frame for that?
So everything depends on if our school board decides to move forward with which option. We're looking at June at the latest. If option 2, 3, and 4 is decided on, then we would hold until November to see what the community believes. And after the community has made their decision at the ballot, we would immediately start that plan. So we're talking as looking at Chapin High School's numbers. I think this would have to be within 3 years.
Okay, and this is a question, and I don't know.
Fall of 2025 is kind of
okay.
the earliest.
The $3 million number that you had next to Harbison West, somebody's wondering, is that like an outstanding offer that's already been given? Where did that number come from?
This is an assessment that was provided by our we had a architect come out to do the appraisal, just as an estimate of the value that we should get for it. Now, somebody might not give us that. We've just notified the public of what we believe we should get. Someone may try to say it's less value than that, but that's what we believe that we should receive for it. If there's a bid that drive it up, then we may get more. but we believe that's a conservative estimate of how much we should receive for that property.
Okay. And you've already touched on this with the magnet programs, and that the magnet programs will continue, including like at Harbison West. If Harbison West moves to that Dutch Fork cluster, the Escalaris pathway would still be available for these students.
Excellent question. Yes, those the instructional plans will stay in place there under options 2, 3, and 4. It's under that phase 4 that the Spring Hill part changes, but Escalores at Harbison West would stay there. That pathway will go all the way to Escalores at Irmo High School, or IB. Whether it's Seven Oaks Media Magnet or the Dutch Fork Environmental, Leap Hearts Engineering, our magnet programs at Leap Heart or Seven Oaks or Nursery Road, or Arch Magnets. Those magnet programs at H.E. Corley, where we do the Leader in Me and the Montessori programs, these will continue as they continue. And anyone I may have forgot, the STEM at Dutch Fork. So we're committed to our magnet of choice options. It's just making sure that we have the facility structure in which to deliver those.
Okay. Let me see what else we have. Okay, and this is a question: is there a thought of allowing the ballot to decide which level they decide? Like question 1, do you approve a bond referendum? Question 2, what level do you approve?
You know, that's a good question. We can talk with, there are certain districts that do multiple questions on the ballot. I think, but the only thing you can put on the ballot is, are you going for one or not? So it would have to be which of the, phases it may be. And we would have to lean to our bond attorney on exactly how that is drafted. You wouldn't put on there, do you go for one? That has to be decided by our board. And so they're seeking your input now, and we will continue to seek your input now to determine if we move forward with an option or not.
Okay. With South Carolina dealing with a massive teacher shortage in many districts, how confident are you that all positions, especially with possible additions of a new elementary school, will be filled with full-time certified personnel?
So if you look at, and that's a good clarification. If you look at the allotment, we do not add. There's not a net gain. So we gain an elementary, but we lose one as well. So we're staffing the same number of facilities, and we're moving the current staff that we have there. And so we're not increasing that. Even the academies, we're taking the existing faculty at Crossroads and moving them into the academies there. And so our staff follows the students. There may be areas in which we would have to expand out. We may need another art teacher here or a band teacher there. But I believe in our district, if we invest in these areas and give our teachers the facilities and the spaces and places in which to do their jobs under the umbrella of a whole child continuum, they'll continue to select School District 5 as a place that they want to be.
And I've got a good question just to clarify. So if there is no referendum that is passed, will Crossroads Intermediate still close, or will it remain?
So right. So I want to address that notion of closure. We're transitioning Crossroads to do different sites, but if it does not, the Crossroads model stays in stays in place as is. In fact, we would, if it does not pass, we move to this format.
Okay. And then we've got a question that's wondering, when is the vote coming up? When would people possibly see this on their ballot?
So our goal is to get it on the November general elections ballot in November. And in order to do that, our board has to make a decision by June. We're asking by the June 13th meeting or earlier to make a decision. That way we would draft the question or questions, as was mentioned. If they select to move forward and it's on the November ballot, we would have to have our questions available to the election commissions of Lexington and Richland County by August the 15th at 12 noon. But the answer is the goal is to get it on the November ballot, this coming November.
Okay, we've got a question. Why wouldn't you be able to place 6th grade programs in both Dutch Fork Middle School and Irmo Middle if you had to keep option 1?
Because of the space there. We have, if you currently look at the size of Irmo Middle School and Dutch Fork Middle School, their capacities are a little over 1,100. With today's number, about 880 students. If you take all of the 6th graders, which is about 700 6th graders, and you split them, you now have to bring in portables anyway. And you also run when you operate a school over 100% capacity, you have more issues than just portables. I mean, it's cafeteria lines, it's hallways, it's moving in the gym, it's all of those capacity spaces that cause when you jam kids in. So those buildings are not built up enough to have 6th, 7th, and 8th. You need these academies there in order to, 1, build out the capacity, but 2, serve students in an area where they don't feel that they're in high density spaces. Which if you're in those hallways during transitions, like at Irmo Middle, so there's 7 transitions in a day, and if you're in those hallways, it can be a lot each and every day to supervise that, to manage that, and to learn in that space. So by having these areas built out with their own academies, the movement is safer. The supervision is improved, and our ability to serve our students is highly increased.
Okay, we've got another Harbison West Elementary question, and since there's such a large community that surrounds it, once it transitions, what is the plan for children who walk to that school?
Yes, that's going to be a very hard transition. I'll be honest with you. I think the notion is all of our bus routes would change. Its location to to the Crossroads site on St. Andrews is not one that you're going to walk from your current site to this site. So we do know that those patterns would change for those students and those families, and we recognize the difficulty in there. If we had the funds, we would attempt to rebuild the entire school to keep it within its community. We're just not in possession of those funds under this plan and under our debt capacity.
Okay, and this goes back to your Finance 101 lesson. There's a lot of construction and houses that are going up in the Chapin area. So are you saying that that doesn't add money to the school district with their taxes?
Now, all of those houses, those subdivisions, every time you see a subdivision go up in our attendance zone, it doesn't help on the operation side. Pays virtually nothing to So if a subdivision adds 50 more houses and 50 more students, it doesn't provide funding for teachers. That after Act 388 in 2006 changed all of that. So with Act 388, before then, yes, each one of the houses in our community and the subdivisions, they were paying a operations millage. So as the families came in, there was funding to provide for teachers, for staff, and for operational needs, utilities, and things of that nature. Now that with Act 388, that was moved to sales tax, and so that was supposed to replace that. And it has taken communities like ours, especially those bedroom communities, places where people go to live. Act 388 has not been good for us at all. So we are basically financed. Teacher salaries are paid through our businesses, our investment properties. Yeah, your cars and boats help as well. So don't want to discount that. But your primary house gets relief, 100% rebate. On debt service side, there's a partial rebate there. But in terms of providing for teachers, teacher salaries, and there's virtually nothing there. There's some homestead stuff, but all these houses and subdivisions that are going up, they're not bringing teachers with them.
Okay, and I think we've got time for at least one more question before we wrap it up. Do you foresee, will there be another enrollment freeze in the Chapin area if the bond referendum does not pass?
That's a great question, and I would like to deliberate on with the board. I am trying to offer a solution that will hold us for the next 15, 20 years. There's two types of decisions that I find myself choice with making: a situational decision and a sustainable decision. The situational decisions make us feel good today because it's what gets us through the day, but it doesn't help us 10 years down the road. The sustainable decision helps us 10 years down the road, but it causes some difficulty today. But as leaders, we're tasked with those sustainable decisions. That's a decision that if we do not move forward, then I need some time to look at what that sustainable route would be. When you do freezes, you're not in a sustainable situation. This plan, we feel, will put us in a sustainable situation. So, I know that not everybody had the opportunity to ask the questions that they want, but you can still submit questions. So please send your questions to communications@lexrich5.org. Again, communications@lexrich5.org. We'll be fielding these questions. It will help us with our discussions and deliberations with our school board and with our community as we move forward. This is the beginning of a discussion. We've been having in advisories. We've been, so whether it's our parent advisory, or student advisory, our administration, our teachers and support, our realtors, our seniors, our foundation, we're having this discussion in the community because we know of these impacts that happens. So yes, we may be 3 different communities, but we're one family, and we want to make sure that everybody is involved in this discussion so that we can make the best decision for all.
And we are recording this, and we will share it on our district social media pages. So follow us there. If you missed any of this, it'll also be on our YouTube channel as well.
Thank you so much.